This is 2 News Live.
Yes, it is. Thanks for joining us on 2 News Live. I'm Brian Schnee. Another very active day when we're talking about our weather. We've been talking about it a lot over the last few months with monsoonal moisture, and of course Sterling will talk about that in a few minutes. We're taking a look at some unique weather events though, the 2%. I'll tell you about it in a few minutes. Before we get there though, I want to take a look at the headlines you can find right now on our website, KUTV.com. Students in Salt Lake back in the classroom again. The school board is considering closing some elementary schools due to declining enrollment. The superintendent says closing schools and reallocating the cash could be better for students. There will be community outreach and public comment opportunities before a final decision is made. Also in our headlines tonight, talking about the Thompson Ridge fire, which is basically no longer burning. It's southeast of Beaver. Got a lot of rain over the last week. Fish Lake National Forest has reduced the closure area, impacting roads and trails nearby this fire location. Acreage unchanged, about 7,200 acres. They're calling containment at 85%, and it's back to the local crews here after being managed by a team. Governor Spencer Cox speaks at a groundbreaking today for the Commerce Crossroads Complex. This is in Canaryville. Investors say the complex will bring more jobs with higher wages and economic opportunities to this region. Finally, in our headlines tonight, talking hoops. Utah basketball hopefuls putting in the work on the court in hopes of perhaps landing a spot in the NBA's G League. This is basically your developmental to what could happen someday if you want to get to the big leagues there in the NBA. Tryouts for the Salt Lake City Stars. Tip-off September 30th. That's at the Lifetime Activity Center in Taylorsville. You could be, if you're good enough, really, you could be repping this color scheme. As we go in depth tonight, you can always get in touch with us during the show. Use the hashtag 2NewsLive to join our conversation. And you can always find us on the social media platforms there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send us a direct message to weigh in. Well, I talked about it. We've been talking about the weather a lot. This man's always talking about the weather.
Yeah,
it's his
love
gig.
to talk about the weather.
This looks to me like a herald, if I'm correct.
Yes. Yeah. Let's send a herald message out to everybody. This is what's a tropical storm? Harold.
Well, the H's. So this other H was over here,
all right? I got to get that Howard thing out of my mind. But anyway, Harold is headed in remnants of, headed to West Texas, and then eventually New Mexico, and then eventually Arizona, and then eventually mainly eastern Utah. The computer models are showing that it could affect the Four Corners area especially. But once again, this is a more typical monsoon flow for us, not necessarily coming out of the Baja like Hillary did, but this is a more typical pattern with the big high pressure centered over the central part of the country. So we're going to see more storms, and we'll talk about that in the forecast. So let's get right to it and show you what's going on. So there is Harold right there, and you can see the green arrows pointing with the moisture towards us. And this is on Friday, according to the upper level charts. It shows a high pressure right there over Texas and Oklahoma. And that moisture comes around and then ends up moving through Utah. So like I said, the computer models are showing mostly the eastern half of the state. We've got this low pressure system off the coast of Oregon, and that's going to be helping pump that moisture north as well. So southwest flow doesn't do well for the western half of the state, but it does pretty well for eastern Utah as that moisture comes up around the Four Corners. So we'll track it over the next couple of days and let you know exactly what we're expecting to happen. And of course, every day the forecast changes just a little bit. So 0.96 in Timpanogos Cave, over a ½ inch in Daniels Summit, ½ an inch. Oh, by the way, they had some hail at Daniels Summit. You can see some of these other amounts. Pretty impressive rainfall totals today. Very, very beneficial. And as we move into the end of August and into September, our temperatures will start to cool. We'll have less threat of seeing major wildfires as the moisture continues to stream into the state through the end of this month, and that's great news. So we're in pretty good shape. Most of the thunderstorm activity this afternoon is in eastern Utah, but we are tracking some storms near the St. George area. As you can see, we've got thunder showers moving through Santa Clara, St. George, Washington, all these areas, seeing these storms moving up from the south right now, and they're moving toward the north at about 25 to 30 miles per hour. So no flash flood warnings in effect right now. Tracking storms in eastern Utah through the Blanding area. We had some storms moving up to the west of Monticello, moving toward the north now, and also some storms that moved out of the Moab area, moving across I-70 and disappearing off to the north. But we still have a chance of some storms around Price and Huntington, and you can see these storms moving toward the north in this part of the state, and that will continue to move through Castle Country over the next hour or so and then move off to the north and dissipate tonight. But there's still a chance for the next couple of hours of seeing those storms. For Salt Lake City, our chances here are about 42% through 8 p.m., and then it drops off a little bit. And as you can see, the severe weather tomorrow is not severe over Utah, but we do have the chance for storms. 81 in Richfield, 83 in Cedar City, 94 in St. George, 86 in Blanding, and 81 in Rock Springs. And those temperatures will climb, by the way. Lots of areas will see that chance of flash flooding again tomorrow, so still avoid the slot canyons, probably for another 5 days or so. Arches Canyonlands 95, 78 at Capitol Reef, 70 at Bryce Canyon, and 89 at Zion National Park with more thunder showers tomorrow. You can see those thunder showers in the forecast. A little cooler on Thursday as that tropical moisture increases from Harold. And then partly cloudy Friday, and check out those temperatures early next week. Triple digits return to southern Utah deserts. 88 goes to 89 on Thursday. More thunderstorm activity on Friday. Thursday night and Friday would be the best chance. And then the weekend, well, sunshine returns. And those temperatures climb back into the 90s. 90 on Saturday, 94 on Sunday. And I've got some interesting information. I don't know if you're interested in seeing it.
I'm very interested.
This is, you know, we talked about tornadic activity possible. Now, the National Weather Service is under some strict guidelines on when they would let the public know that these chances exist. And that's why the National Weather Service is there, and they do their job very well. But here's some things that would have been not good for tornadoes to develop over Utah today. Unidirectional wind shear with a height. That means that there is basically all the winds from the surface up are all the same. So there's really no spin in the atmosphere. Cloud cover and consistent showers, that inhibits surface heating. So we don't get the lift, the convective instability that we like to see, like we're seeing over eastern Utah today where they have less cloud cover. And then warmer air aloft. Warm air does not create good thunderstorms. It creates good nimbus clouds, nimbus stratus, which is what we've seen most of the day today, just rain showers, no thunder, and it decreases the upper level instability. So we've got to have that cold air aloft. It starts, and we've got to have a little spin in the atmosphere, a little vorticity. Going to throw some crazy weather words at you today. A little vorticity to spin up that air, and then we'll start to see a little better chance. So that's why they said 2%, and we're not faulting them for saying that, but they had a lot of things going against that chance of 2%.
Now, we're going to hear from the folks in the National Weather Service in a few minutes, but I do want to ask you, you've been obviously covering the forecast and the realm of weather here in Utah for many, many years.
Yes.
Is this a very odd occurrence for them to even put this out there?
For this type of a system, I would say it's pretty odd. But what you want is a nice little system coming in from the west with a little spin in the atmosphere. You get the tropical moisture combining with that. That's something to look out for. But if you just have tropical moisture moving up and really no dynamics moving in, I forecasted severe storms at Global Weather Center in the Air Force for years, and we would watch for the spin, we would watch for the cold air, and we would watch for dry lines. That was crazy stuff too.
So we'll hear the justification coming up in just a few minutes, but we've got yours,
yes,
which is good. So for them, they were saying there's a chance.
Yeah, and they were doing their job.
Remember, you can download our 2 News weather app to know about changes in your neighborhood. You can get updated forecasts, live radar right on your phone. The app is free to download. Talking more weather tonight, continuing to go in depth. A live look from St. George, right? We got you. Wow, once again, it's reminiscent of what I saw this morning when I woke up with Chase here. He was showing a picture in St. George. The water was clearly out there. And in my time here in Utah, 3-4 years, I don't see this very much. As a matter of fact, my first year I was talking about, I believe, a record drought in terms of the amount of days. What was that, 2019 maybe? Anyway, things are getting better here on the Wasatch Front. It's southern Utah that's gotten a lot of the attention. We've seen storms and wet roads throughout parts of the afternoon. Amanda Gilbert is out kind of cruising through it. Live look at how this storm, or at least what's happening here, is impacting the current conditions of our roads. Amanda, what are you saying?
Yeah, Brian, I'm on I-15. I've been here for a few hours now, and we've kind of been, as I'll show you, kind of in and out of some light rain here and there. We've been in rush hour traffic, but nothing drivers can't handle. Has been too bad. It's just been one of those kind of gloomy, days, that we've all been dealing with. But I have talked with Rocky Mountain Power. They say they came up with a plan to prepare for remnants of Tropical Storm Hillary that involved having extra staff, having equipment on standby, communicating with their meteorologists. Luckily, the theme so far has been nothing has been too bad, especially in northern Utah. So things have been good, but hopefully that trend stays that way the rest of this week. So coming up at 6, you're going to hear from Rocky Mountain Power. Back to you, Brian.
Amanda, thank you. I know you've been out there kind of cruising. Has there been any concern really with the roads? I know we saw an accident or a crash involving a semi-truck in the Layton area. Any other backups that you've noticed here, which could be maybe even attributed to weather?
Haven't noticed anything too bad. It's been pretty clear. I know there's been some crashes. Rocky Mountain Power did mention that yesterday there were some power outages because of a few trees down here and there. They dealt with one in West Valley, one in Holiday, but nothing too big. And today, though, they said they have not really seen anything crazy. As far as roads go, it's honestly been pretty clear.
Amanda Gilbert live for us tonight in the Mobile Weather Lab. Amanda, thank you. Sterling was talking about this. The National Weather Service putting out some information regarding the potential for tornadoes in Utah today. The threat percentage, 2%. Here's why. How do you describe our tornadic activity here in the state over the years?
So very low, but we do get tornadoes in Utah. We average about 3 a year across the state. Our most recent one was Father's Day 2022 in Fruitland, which is in Duchesne County. But we've had in the past 5 years, we've had them one in Woods Cross and one in Washington Terrace. So uncommon, but not unheard of.
What had to happen to create this, basically this very long sort of column that you guys put out in the graphic that suggests there's the potential, very slim, very small potential for this sort of activity?
So, those graphics that indicate the marginal risk, tornadic risk, come from the Storm Prediction Center. It's our national center in Norman, Oklahoma. They also do, if you hear tornado watch or severe thunderstorm watch, that comes from them. And basically what's happening here is the combination of the very deep moisture that we've had in place over the past several days, in concert with, there's a low pressure system over California that's moving to the east, and its approach is providing additional instability, additional spin in the atmosphere. That's going to make a potential for later this afternoon and into this evening, provided we can get rid of some of this cloud cover that we presently have. Develop some showers and thunderstorms that could be strong to severe, that could produce some strong gusty winds. The microburst winds are a more common threat, but there is a non-zero chance of a tornado is what they're indicating there. That 2% being that at any point in that area of 2% risk, there's a 2% chance of a tornado forming within 25 miles of that point. Just want to emphasize that the risk of Utah seeing a tornado today is very, very low, 2%. We're simply saying that it's non-zero, which is a bit novel for us. Of greater impact today is going to be the potential for flash flooding, particularly over southern Utah, where we have a flood watch in effect. Given the amount of moisture in place, and combined with this instability, any showers or thunderstorms that develop are going to be capable of producing very heavy rainfall and move over the right spot. Burn scars, slot canyons, normally dry washes could cause some issues. I just want to advise people that have outdoor plans, particularly over southern Utah, particularly if those plans involve slot canyons or outdoor activities like that, to strongly consider postponing those plans, because being in a slot canyon with the risk of flooding this high is extremely dangerous. We just want people to be advised about that.
So we showed you some video from 1999. Sterling remembers that one, of course, very well. I'm sure we'll talk about that one in just a moment. And on the subject, one of my colleagues was talking to former Salt Lake City Mayor Rocky Anderson today. Rocky was obviously heavily involved in the area in 1999. Here's what he had to say about what he remembers from that devastating day here in Salt Lake.
What I remember most is that it cost someone their life at the Salt Palace. They were setting up for Outdoor Retailers Convention. Very, very sad. And then it hit the Sun Tavern. It set down on Sun Tavern basically destroyed that, and then came up and just bounced around up by the Capitol. And it was a very frightening thing. I'm just glad that there wasn't more loss of life, but I've often thought about that one gentleman that was setting up for outdoor retailers, and just out of nowhere this weather event comes along and costs him his life.
Well, Sterling, what do you make of 1999? I'm sure you remember that day.
I do remember that day. 12:45, I believe, was about the time that tornado hit downtown Salt Lake City. And at first it was like, is this really happening? Is this, but as I looked across from the Crossroads Mall, which doesn't even exist anymore, looking from the Crossroads Mall towards the Delta Center, and you saw all these sparks and things popping, and then you realize, and then you look up and there's a funnel cloud, and you realize it's a tornado. So it was one of those situations that we were on the air live for probably 8-9 hours straight. We were live on CNN because it was a national story at that point. But I had forecasters I worked with in the Air Force that says, "Oh, that's where you ended up," because we were, like I said, we were doing a lot of television. But yeah, it was a sad situation. There were people walking around where shards of glass had broken out of hotel windows and they were cut. So it was kind of a gruesome scene. And they had helicopters landing on 300 West there picking up the injured. And there were, I think, over 100 people were injured from that tornado, including that gentleman that passed away. But they were picking up the injured and taking them up to the hospital right there on 300 West.
When it comes to tornado activity in Utah, I was obviously looking into it today because we had this brief discussion with the folks at the National Weather Service, wondering about the slim chance of what this looks like. They've been tracking it since 1950. NOAA has been, at least some of the reports. That is the only deadly tornado activity that I could find in Utah's history when it comes to that sort of weather activity. Is it the most prolific weather event you've covered?
It is. I think
at least here in Salt Lake City.
In Salt Lake City, it absolutely is. Now, we did have another tornado that was in pretty much the same area years and years before, but there wasn't that catastrophic event because they had that retailer's tent that was being set up, and it just turned into a weapon. That whole tent and everything inside of it just turned into a weapon, and that's why so many people were injured, and of course the glass coming out of the hotels, and it was just crazy stuff.
And here in 2023, the name is back on the building. It's the Delta Center once again.
That's right. The Delta Center is alive and well.
After receiving a lot of damage that day.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us for 2 News Live tonight. We're back tomorrow. Hope you have a great rest of your evening. About 13 minutes or so, we'll see you on 2 News at 6. Have a great night.
Good night.